A 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. You know what that is, baby? That's what we call a 5-piece. No, you're not getting chicken nuggets. You're getting 5 straight Metropolitan victories. How you doing, everybody? It's your boy, Wardy. We are back at it with our latest Metropolitan postgame discussion as the Metsies take down the Colorado Rockies here in a comfortable fashion by a final score of 7-3. Not comfortable throughout the entire course of the game, but for the most part, we all kind of had this hunch the Mets were going to win this ball game, and they did exactly that. Yet another game where they put up a 7-piece on the opposing team, continuing to showcase one of the best offenses in all Major League Baseball for the past month and a half now. Now the Metsies sitting 4 games above 500, securely in that second wildcard spot at the time of us being live right now, have now tied their season best record this season of 4 games or more above 500. If the Mets go out and do the whole sweep thing tomorrow against the Rockies in their finale before they kick off their All-Star break, they will be 5 games above 500 for the first time this season. The Mets cannot go to the All-Star break with a losing record, and it is so amazing and exciting to say that is in fact the truth here. How you doing, everybody? Again, thank you all so much, everybody, first chiming in live on our replay. We have a lot to get into in today's showing as we're going to break down the highlights, everything that transpired inning by inning in this victorious matchup for the Amazons here. We're going to get into what I certainly liked on the pitching end, what was working for Christian Scott versus what wasn't working for the young right-hander today. Jose Butto continuing to showcase his dominance as a true reliable multi-inning reliever in this bullpen. Danilo Nunez doing the exact same thing, so the bullpen got the job done. The offense, Luis Torrens is doing everything from throwing out runners yet again there as the best backstop in the game of baseball. It almost feels like the Yanks could utilize a guy like Torrens if they kept him in the organization and just dump him away for $100,000 to David Stearns of the Mets. Torrens now 8 for 11 this season, throwing runners out at second base, and yeah, he provides some offense too. So a lot of good positive notes to get into on this Metropolitan victory as the Mets again currently stand second in the wild card and 4 games above 500 for a Mets team that it wasn't all that long ago we're sitting 11 games below 500. Yes, baby, a lot to break down in today's show. As always, folks, thank you all so much for being here. Well, go Mets now. Time to watch my UFC live fights. Yep, UFC fights tonight as well. Very excited to see how that one's going to go with Rose Namajunas along with all the other fights going on. We may touch on them as we're going to get into our daily betting picks with our great friends and America's #1 sportsbook at BetUS. Make sure to check them out by clicking the link down below in the description. As always, folks, and thank you all so much in advance for doing exactly that, everybody. But I want to do a quick roll call before we deep dive this ball game and break down everything that needs to get in here. Gotta be on high alert, yes. And actually, Zach, I'm so glad you brought that up. I'm going to start off today's discussion by discussing something that I normally would not find myself discussing here on the channel. As many of you guys know, I'm strict, no nonsense when it comes to anything and everything political related here on the channel. I don't care who you're in favor of. I don't care how much you are, say, Joe Biden's biggest fan or Trump's biggest fan. It truly does not mean anything to me. I have so many diehard friends that are Mets fans that have completely opposing viewpoints on the political end than myself. Regardless on where you stand on the political end, something that was non-political happened today in this country, and there is no good, there's no positive takeaway from it. I don't care, again, where you reside and your fandom and your appreciation for our current president or our former president. Any type of potential assassination attempt is something I'm simply never going to condone, and I'm glad that didn't happen today, obviously, that we saw there with Donald. So to anyone that condones that kind of behavior, I'm here to tell you right now, if you get offended by what I'm about to say, that's a you problem. We don't need you as a viewer here on the channel. So to anyone out there that is about to jump in the chat for whatever reason to talk about what happened, obviously, with Donald, please keep that to yourself. This is a New York Metropolitan discussion. This is not anything other than that, but I do want to preface what we saw today happen in this country as this latest example of just how much we have a major problem with a true divide between one versus the other, and that's something that certainly needs to change, and we know that. That, however, those type of actions is not the way to do so. So far from condoning any kind of nonsensical action that we saw today is a terrible look for this country, and I'm not happy to be talking about this whatsoever. But again, anyone that wants to come in here to talk about that, please exit the door while you're at it. Don't let it hit too hard on your ass in doing so. That's all I have to say about that. Just absolutely ridiculous what we had to see in this country today, and I'm going to leave it there. Not talking about it any more than that. And that's what I have to say, folks. All right, let's get into this one. Let's break it down. Edwin, long time no see. Great member as always. Happy to have you in here. Again, and that's perfectly fine, Zach. Again, it doesn't matter where you guys stand for me. I just don't want anyone coming in the chat today and making this, obviously more about them or something along those lines. People have a tendency to do that, especially emotions are always backed when talking anything remotely connected to politics, let alone what we saw transpire today. Naturally, there's going to be a lot of back and forth going on in socials. Just do not want that to be the case in today's show, and I appreciate everyone for not doing that. Mike, thank you for the $5 donation. I appreciate that. Lindor not being an all-star is a bigger mystery than Bigfoot's existence. Shaking my head. Thank you so much for the donation. Yes, you are 100% right. Unfortunately, this goes in hand with the fan vote. Obviously, the fan voting has been the reason why Pete Alonso got into a degree over Lindor and Nimmo, even though that they were more deserving. We all know that. Nimmo now leads all of the National League outfielders in F4. Francisco Lindor is second in F4, only trailing Mookie Betts still among the shortstops in Major League Baseball, at least out of the National League. He's top five there overall in the National League. Lindor has been absolutely tremendous. Brandon Nimmo has been absolutely tremendous. Two guys that deserve to be all-stars. It's a shame that they aren't. However, that isn't stopping them from playing some great baseball this season that we have found ourselves having. And again, appreciate that, GD. But all right, guys, let's get into breaking down this ball game. But before we do anything else, let's let it rip as we always do with the official, the one and only, you guessed it, baby, WardyNYM post-game jingle. Shout out, as always, to my guys, Greg and Jordan, with the official WardyNYM post-game jingle, folks. Now, let's get into breaking down said ball game and all the key takeaways in this Metropolitan victory. Again, it was a little bit of a sweatier one for a bit. Christian Scott was as advertised again with a young, exciting starter that pounds the strike zone, and when he does that, can be susceptible to the lawn ball. Pair that with Scott, who didn't have his pitches working to really his liking today, you could rightfully say, and that is why this game went from being 4-0 Metropolitan lead to a one-run ball game. Thankfully the bullpen, Jose Buto, Danilo Nunez stepped up big time. As we get into this matchup, everybody, let me make sure I have the proper highlights set up for each and every one of you, because I don't at the moment. Give me 1 second. If you guys are chiming in live here on Twitter, thank you all so much. Hit that like, that follow button, that retweet button. Thank you again, as always, folks. But no, per usual, I'm only going to be interacting with our live viewers here on YouTube. So head over to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button if you haven't, and let's have ourselves an amazing Metropolitan conversation here. Let me make sure that this is nice and shifted there. Okay, I think we're all set on where the highlights need to be. Perfect Luis Torrens throwing out batters. That's what we love to see, baby. D-Mac with a $5 haul. D-Mac says, I was getting nervous seeing too many runners left on third with one out. Thank you, Lindor. That was awesome to see. Yep, very happy to see Lindor, again, clutching up with a 3-run dead center shot that we saw in the 8th inning, all with 2 outs. The Mets continue to be one of the most clutch teams in Major League Baseball. Who would have thought that you would see myself out of all people come out with such a sentence? Yet that is, in fact, the truth. Yes, the Metropolitans, since May 31st, have not only been a top offense in Major League Baseball, but have quite literally been one of the most clutch with runners in scoring position. And a great example of just how much success they've had with runners in scoring position, I'm not going to highlight just Luis Torrens, who didn't even start today after hitting 2 home runs yesterday for Mr. OMG himself, only because he's still dealing with the after effects of coming off of some flu-like symptoms the past couple days, so understandable there. McNeil was productive in his place today, so I simply cannot complain on that front, even though I certainly wanted to when we saw the pregame lineup, obviously. But to get into a little bit more here, what we saw not only with guys Iglesias, who's batting 500 with runners in scoring position, then you have guys like Brandon Nimmo as well, who entering today we saw was batting over 400 this season with runners in scoring position, with 7 home runs, a freaking double, triple, a home run, and 21 21 RBIs. So tremendous stuff that we have seen. I'm sorry, not 7 home runs, 7 doubles is what I meant to say. Francisco Lindor has been one of the more clutch hitters for the Mets this season as well. Collectively as a whole, between Nimmo, Alvarez, Vientos, Iglesias, and this is really excluding guys like JD Martinez because he's been in a slump the past couple weeks, and Pete Alonso has been fluctuating up and down all year. That's excluding their production, and it just shows you how clutch this team has been, and I truly believe the best still is yet to come for them this season, and that's a very exciting thought to say the least. But D-Mac, thank you for that donation. I appreciate that. Again, I appreciate everyone first chiming in, folks. Awarding 99, $490 today, and the Mets win. What more can I ask for? There you go, Daniel. You're welcome, brother. Happy to have you in here as always. Shout out to my amazing Mets fans first chiming in live on a replay. Let me know your initial reactions and thoughts to the latest Metropolitan victory as they take down the Colorado Rockies comfortably tonight by a final score of 7-3. Now, without further ado, let's get into breaking down said ball game inning by inning, because there's a lot to make note of, not only on Kristen Scott today, that we're going to highlight with my man Isaac Rothman. Isaac, who made his WardyNYM debut, rather, on the channel yesterday. Check that out in yesterday's postgame segment. Isaac, who is my daily Mets pitching contributor, really breaks down a lot of numbers beyond the eye test with how starters and relievers and prospects do. That's actually a perfect transition, I'd like to say real quick, into a Mets prospect that stood out big time today in the MLB Futures game. None other than, yes, Brandon Sproat. Brandon Sproat, a top 100 MLB pipeline prospect now because he's touching 100 and 102 on the gun. He pitched a scoreless inning today in the MLB Futures game representing the National League. And what stood out so much about Brandon Sproat wasn't just the fact that he had a clean 1-2-3 inning of work, including a four-seam fastball at 99 miles per hour, riding in on those hands of those batters, making them break their bats in doing so today. That's how good Sproat looked. But a little bit more analysis on what was working with his changeup, which is quite literally Kevin Gausman type level in regards to how his mix is very similar, I should say, to what you get with a guy like Gausman. But Brandon Sproat's metrics today that we saw with the four-seam fastball was right around 98.5 miles per hour, 13 inches of vertical break, 10%, not per 10%, but 10 inches of horizontal break. Then we saw there with the sweeper, 85 miles per hour, 3 inches of vertical break, 12 inches of horizontal break, which makes sense with the sweeper. But the changeup has been the thing of beauty. This is already an elite changeup among pitching prospects in Major League Baseball. Just for some context, good, average to good horizontal break on these pitches is around 11 inches. We see today a 90 mile per hour changeup, which is just absurd. Already around 5 miles per hour, at least higher than what an average changeup you'll find yourself at the major league level. At least a 5-inch vertical and 16 inches on the horizontal break. Tremendous stuff there that we saw from Brandon Sproat, one of the top pitching prospects for the Mets, who actually spoke pregame today and was asked his thoughts about potentially being called up sooner to be utilized as a reliever, given how electric his stuff is and how much the Mets have been needing bullpen help this year. And Sproat obviously was all ears. He said, sign me up, not opposed to that whatsoever. Anything that's going to get me to the bigs fastest is by all means okay with me. So Brandon Sproat, smiling cheek to cheek today, did not only have a fantastic 1-2-3 inning that we saw for the Futures game, but looked like that he had the right head on his shoulders heading into it, and that is awesome to see. So that's the latest there on Brandon Sproat that I want to share with you all, everybody. But now let's reel in and get back into breaking down this ball game, because as I mentioned, we will talk a bit on the pitching with Kristen Scott, Jose Butto, Daniel Nunez, what these guys had to provide for this bullpen today especially. But let's get into the offensive end of things, because this was a matchup between Jose Butto, and then we saw there on the mound Feltner on the mound here for the Colorado Rockies, and thankfully for the Mets, they made Feltner pay fairly often into said ball game. But it starts there in the first inning, a quick 1-2-3 inning of work that we saw from Kristen Scott, and it was Scott on the bump to start, not Butto. If I said Butto, I didn't mean to say that. He was in relief that we saw after Scott today. No less, the Mets went down in order because they struck out. The entire side struck out from Feltner. So a great start there for the pitcher here that we saw for the Colorado Rockies, but thankfully that wouldn't last. As we see in the second, Brenton Doyle gets a single. He is thankfully caught stealing second base because of Luis Torrens that we just highlighted. Torrens now 8 for 11 this season when throwing out batters trying to steal second base, and that's all she does it for the inning. As we then head to the bottom of the second inning, Pete Alonso kicks things off with a leadoff single. DJ Stewart, who got the start today, along with Jeff McNeil over guys like Jose Iglesias, over guys like Harrison Bader, both of which came off the bench today after totaling 4 home runs together yesterday. A lot of fans, rightfully so, weren't happy with the lineup today, viewed it as a punt lineup. However, this punt lineup still prevailed in the end for the Metsies and Carlos Mendoza, and I'm not going to complain there if it works. If it works, it works. DJ Stewart with a walk today. Mark Vientos with a line out. Ben Gamel walks, so we got bases juiced, no outs. And yeah, Ben Gamel started today too, folks. That is correct, and they still scored 7 runs, which is an amazing thing. And the offense kick-started here thanks to Luis Torrens. What was initially looking like a clear double play ball is botched in the infield that we see by Brendan Rodgers, and because of this reason, they're able to score 2 runs. So 2 runs later, Torrens is on base. We got runners second and third, and the Metsies are up 2-0 in this ball game. Jeff McNeil, more like Jeff McDoubles, baby. Hope you order that from McDonnie D's today, because McNeil rips his 13th double of the season. Again, Jeff getting the start over Iglesias today, as Jose still trying to get back to 100% as he's been dealing with an illness the past couple of days. However, even with the home runs we saw from yesterday from Jose today, Jeff McNeil steps up when we need him to big time with this huge bases clearing double to make it a 4-0 Metropolitan lead. From there, Francisco Lindor gets a walk, steals his 5th bag of the year. Not his 5th. We see Jeff McNeil steal his 5th bag. He gets to third base, and Lindor steals his 18th as the boys do the double steal action beautifully, and unfortunately, the Mets cannot score more from there. Again, they're up 4-0. Runners at second and third with 1 out still, but Brandon Nimmo strikes out swinging, a rare offer of a day that we saw from Brandon today, and JD Martinez, who had a lot of ground outs, not a great day from JDM at the plate, and I do apologize. Nimmo had 1 single today, but again, Nimmo not as sharp in his at-bats versus what you have been seeing, where he's been Brett Bonds himself the past week of baseball. But as we continue to break everything down, folks, we kick off the top of the third, and Jake Cave rips his 2nd home run of the season, just gets out, just hits the black there above the orange line, there to deep left field, opposite field, line drive home run, makes it a 3-run ball game. From there, a 1 out later, Sam Hilliard rips his first double of the season. Charlie Blackmon would then ground out softly, and Ezekiel Tovar flies out to end the inning. The Mets are up 4-1 heading to the bottom of the third. And in the bottom of the third, the Mets do nothing there. They strike out a couple times from guys like DJ Stewart, Mark Vientos, and Ben Gamel. And this is after, apologies everybody, this is after DJ Stewart, mind you, struck out but still got to first base because the ball got past the catcher and he got to first base in time. Yes, that actually happened, and the throw was overthrown to the first baseman of the Rockies, which allowed Stewart to get there safely. No less, struck out the side still was that we saw from the Rockies, and Feltner for the 2nd time today outside of getting Alonso to pop out, and that does it for the inning. On the top of the fourth, Ryan McMahon with a double, his 21st of the season, and that's all she wrote, though. At least that's what it felt like, but Brendan Rodgers gets on base with a hit by pitch, and Jake Cave strikes out to end the inning. Christian Scott works out of a 2-on, 2-out jam, and the Mets are still up 4-1, heading to the bottom of the fourth. And in the bottom of the fourth with 2 outs, Lindor and Nimmo go back-to-back with the walks. They get on base. Feltner's day is done, so already bullpen action here for the Colorado Rockies, not even getting through the 4th inning, but they do manage to get through unscathed as, yes, JD Martinez, once again with runners in scoring position, or at least runners on base rather, grounds out to end the inning. Sam Hilliard rips a single for his 2nd time on base today to kick off the top of the 5th. Charlie Blackmon then drives him in with a meatball of a home run, his 6th home run of the year, a home run in back-to-back nights for the veteran outfielder and Blackmon, a longtime Colorado Rocky that we all have known for how long now, between himself and obviously Cargo and Tulowitzki. That's the core 3 that I think of right away. And of course, Trevor Story, cannot forget him during his time in Colorado too. No less, Blackmon makes it a 1-run ball game, and Ezekiel Tovar rips his 27th double of the year. So runners in scoring position, Ryan McMahon is walked, and that does it for Christian Scott's final line today, folks. He doesn't go anything farther than 4.1 innings of 7 hit, 3 earned run ball, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts. Before we deep dive further here on what stood out, or maybe what lacked plethora of stood out on the front of Christian Scott. I definitely want to know how you guys felt about Scott today, because yes, he struggled a bit with the command, but Scott is just one of these guys where I know he's going to continue to get better with age, absolutely, but in the interim has some fine-tuning that he needs to do, really kind of honing his craft with his pitches today. It was barreled hard, some hard contact for sure, but was able to work out some jams. So for Scott, without even getting into the numbers yet, just with the eye test, you could tell, try to induce a bit more swing and miss, not have so much contact right in the heart of the zone the way he has been. He loves patting the zone, but he needs to trust his pitches a little bit more to induce more of that swing and miss. Because again, not that you want walks to happen, but if walks are going to come at the sacrifice of really just trying to get yourself acclimated more at the MLB level and try to eliminate the amount of high contact that you're giving up in the zone to these hitters, that's absolutely something that you should be doing if you're Christian Scott. So we will get into Scott more here shortly as we're going to wrap up the show. Not wrap up the show, but wrap up the discussion on the game breakdown rather. But to reel back into breaking down said ball game, as the Metsies won this one again by a final score of 7-3. Jose Butto comes in, and Jose gets a brilliant double play ball by Elias Diaz to end the fifth unscathed there. Great work. It's still a one-run ball game. And then as we hit the bottom of the fifth, DJ Stewart gets on base for another time today, this time an actual single. You know, it's on a ground ball, doesn't lift it, but does get a single. Then Mark Vientos and Ben Gamel go down in order from there. The top of the sixth, it's a beautiful 1-2-3 inning of work. And I don't know what is it about the Mets and the Rockies today, but they just love striking out the sides. And Jose Butto struck out the side here in the sixth inning. Bulldog mentality. Butto, who had a fantastic last relief outing for the Mets, the best out of the first three that we have seen from him this season, where he actually had proper command of his pitches, looked comfortable, didn't have nearly as much lady luck on his side. In the case of Butto today, yes, he was pulled after allowing a runner or two to get on before Nunez came in after a couple innings. He was absolutely fantastic. So in the case of Jose Butto, continue to dominate the way that you have been, my friend, and we are going to succeed with you in this bullpen and as a multi-inning option for either a six-man rotation once Kodai Senga returns, or as just a true starter that the Mets may consider based on what they do come the trade deadline with both buying and selling. And I don't know where we're at in the like count, everybody, but if you guys can continue to smash a like and subscribe on for your boy, greatly appreciated. We're not going to be long-winded with our live show today, everybody. One, there's a quick turnaround with the day game tomorrow, and I will be live for that later on, not immediately after the game, but before the end of the night for sure. And secondly, I do have a short turnaround myself today as I have plans this evening, so we're not going to be doing a typical 1 hour live show today. We'll probably be at absolute most around 40 minutes, but we're going to be play it by ear and see how the show and the flow is going as we always do. Luis Torrens rips his fifth double of the season that we've seen the bottom of six. Torrens doing great things, getting on base for another time today, already drove in a couple runs. Now Torrens with the double. McNeil grounds out, unfortunately. So does Lindor, and Nimmo strikes out. No one can score. The runner in scoring position to kick off the bottom of the sixth. In the seventh, we then see more work from Jose Butto, and Jose Butto does a fantastic job. We see defensive substitutions as well. Harrison Bader replaces DJ Stewart there, batting fifth and commanding center field then. And we also see Brandon Nimmo shift from going from center to then left field for Bader. And in the case of Ben Gamel, Gamel would switch from left to right field for defensive matchups for the Mets for the remainder of said ball game. Jose Butto works a clean 1-2-3 inning of work in the seventh, including a pair of strikeouts. Butto, 5 strikeouts through 2.2 innings today. You absolutely love to see it, baby. On the offensive end, nothing shows, so then we advance to the eighth inning, and this is where Butto gets in a bit of a jam, so this is where you need another great arm in Daniel Nunez to step up, and these are the David Stearns call-ups this year, guys, that made a difference, especially in the case of Nunez, who no one had on their radar initially heading into the season for, I think, the veteran 27, 28-year-old right-hander finally getting a taste of the bigs and making it work with that wipeout slider and that beautiful fastball sitting 97, 98 and touching 99 for sure. Tovar with a single, McMahon with a walk, 2 on, no out for Daniel Nunez, who gets Elias Diaz for the second time today to ground into a double play and then gets Brenton Doyle to pop out to end the inning. Love to see it. Ben Gamel gets on with a walk. Torrens gets on with a hit by pitch. Not a great hit by pitch, but he stays in the ball game, thankfully. And then we see Jalen Beeks comes in as the latest reliever there. Southpaw reliever in Beeks. I've actually talked about Beeks a decent amount on the channel the past month. He's a lefty option that the Mets may consider by the deadline to add to this bullpen as an upgrade over someone like Jake Diekman. However, Jalen Beeks didn't do himself any favors of being dealt to the Mets today, as he was a New York Metropolitan the way he was dishing out meatballs to Francisco Lindor middle. Lindor, again, why are you pitching to Francisco there? It's a great question. Lindor with 2 outs and 2 on rips a dead center bomb from the right side of the plate, and that makes it a 7-3 Metropolitan lead. Lindor's 17th home run of the season, which you absolutely love to see. Lindor continues to do fantastic things in the leadoff spot for the Mets and continues to be one of the most valuable players out of all players in the National League, which is why we discussed him as an actual dark horse MVP candidate coming out of the National League. If it's not going to be Shohei Ohtani or Mookie Betts, you have another class of players to consider, and I do believe Francisco Lindor deserves to be in that dark horse conversation. The numbers back it, especially when you look at what he has been doing for the past 2+ months now. He has been absolutely tremendous for this team, both on and off the field, and the clubhouse, there with the defense, and certainly with the bat, which we have seen for a good stretch of games now, to say the least. Mets take a 7-3 lead as Brandon Nimmo rips a single thereafter. JD Martinez strikes out then to end the inning. We then head to the 9th where Daniel Nunez works a quick 1-2-3 inning, and the Metsies go on again to win by a final score of 7-3. Everybody, I want to hear how you're feeling about this Metsie victory. Again, this is an awesome one. Absolutely one of these games where you're happy to see the turnout, a series victory. 5 straight victories now for the Amazons, everybody. And it's crazy to see how the Mets are a series sweep away tomorrow now from being already 5 games above 500. Who would have thought that the Mets would have been 5 games, or at least close to 5 games above 500, looking at this team a month and a half ago? No one would have thought it, yet this is the reality because of how good and how consistent this team has been. Even with their bullpen woes being one of the worst bullpens in Major League Baseball, and especially the National League that we have seen for the past month now, it has not wavered the Mets' abilities to continue to churn out wins. And crazy enough, entering today's game, folks, the Mets had the same 48-45 record throughout their first stretch of games in a 162, just like the same record they had back in the 2015 season, the last time the Mets had as deep of a playoff run that they found themselves having. I'm not saying the Mets are going all the way to the dance this year, but what I am telling you is that things continue to trend in the right direction for this Mets team, and we're now 49-45, which, again, is so awesome to say. Seriously, 5 games, I want that sweep so bad. I selfishly want that sweep so bad before the All-Star break tomorrow. 6 straight dubs, having a comfortable wild card spot there. You know, not too much to really be concerned about. You know what you need to add on to, and you know the reinforcements you're looking for post All-Star break. A lot of good things in Mets land for sure there, right? And as I see from a lot of you guys what you're saying, someone in the chat says, Wardy, as Chris says, this lineup is so balanced, says Chris Goodwin. And it is. Even on a day like today, I know you're playing a lesser Rockies team, so that absolutely went in hand with why Carlos Mendoza chose to opt for Jeff McNeil today and chose to opt for Ben Gamel instead of feeling an absolute need to have not a 100% healthy Jose Iglesias back in the lineup, and the Harrison Bader who, you know, ended today's game defensively but didn't start today's game that we saw. And speaking of starting, everybody, I think that's a perfect pivot now into getting more on the pitching end. So let's break down exactly that. Audio dropping and popping for anyone else. Hoping we don't have any audio issues, everybody, but my apologies if we do have that. Let me double check. Yeah, no, my mic should be good on my end, folks, but if the audio issues are there, please let me know, and I will gladly try to fix them the best way I can, just like we did in yesterday's show, too. And we have roughly 300 live viewers here on YouTube. Thank you so much to each and every one of you. Smash those buttons, as always, folks. Help us get to 100 likes by the end of the live show, and thank you all so much in advance for doing exactly that. But I definitely want to pivot now on the pitching end, because my man Isaac Rothman has a lot to say on not only what we saw from Tanner Scott today, but also Mr. Jose Budo. So let's do exactly that, folks. Let's get into breaking down a bit more on the pitching end, at least. And on the pitching end, Christian Scott today, as we mentioned, 4.1 innings of 7 hit, 3 earned run ball, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts for a 4.36 ERA on the season. So what was working versus what wasn't working for Jose Budo? And final thing, because this is popping in my mind and my ADD is not going to allow me to disregard it, check me out on the New York Post Sports YouTube channel earlier today. My man and Dexter Henry broke down last night's victory for the Metsies. The vibes are immaculate at Citi Field. What has been working for them? The bullpen woes continue. What could be had there, and everything in between. Just all the latest facets regarding the New York Metropolitans. I have that link for that video available for you all on the community tab here on YouTube. Make sure to check it out. And one more update, folks. Throughout the All-Star break next week, we will be having trade content out, so be on the lookout. I've been telling you about it this week, but I purposely have pushed it off now because I want to really take advantage of that time frame where I don't have to worry about covering games. I don't intend on covering the All-Star game, nor do I intend on covering the Home Run Derby unless Alonso really balls balls out, then we have something awesome to discuss, which I will certainly won't be complaining there. But throughout the week span, there won't be Mets games going on until Friday, but we will have content for you throughout the week. So make sure you guys don't miss out. Long overdue, a lot of awesome and interesting trade options for the Mets, both buying and selling now, as we're 2 weeks away right about from the MLB trade deadline on July 29th. But to reel back into this, Christian Scott's arsenal today, four-seam fastball was 59% of the time, sitting right around 94 and topped out 96. Gyro slider 21% of the time, topping out around 86.5, or sitting rather, and 21% of the arsenal. Sweeper 16% of the arsenal, 82 miles per hour. Splitter 5% of the arsenal, around 84 miles per hour. Scott's velo was down across the board today, but it was his breaking pitches, not his fastball, that got him in trouble, believe it or not. Despite the velocity being down quite a bit today, what wasn't working, it was actually the one fastball was the thing that was working in his favor a bit, and he threw it more than ever at a whopping 59% rate. Now, what is the glaring alarm there? He was very fastball heavy today with that late rising fastball, that tunnels that my man Isaac has broken down beautifully in the past in his pitching Twitter thread. So check him out at Isaac Roffman, at ISAACGROFFMAN, for all your Mets pitching threads needs there on Twitter. But it's crazy how he threw it roughly 60% of the time because he did not have those off-speed and breaking pitches working nearly to his degree that he would have liked. Scott's gyro slider is considered his best breaking pitch, but his sweeper was the better pitch today, as the gyro slider was often flat, and that's something that's hurt him in the middle of that strike zone that we've seen him hang some. Scott needs to find a way to get those lefties out. He has yet to really do so. His gyro slider and splitter are supposed to be the pitches to do so, but they haven't been able to do that on a consistent basis, and they certainly weren't working today, leading him into the jams and the trouble he found himself in. Christian Scott gets a rating 5 out of 10 today. And for a Scott who went 4.1 innings of 3 earned run ball, I'm going to give him a 4.5 out of 10 for the rookie right-hander. Still plenty more to work on and build off of here. It was nice to see, even with the fastball heavy in 4.1 innings as much as it was, it didn't hurt him as much as it could have. And unlike the last time Scott was on the bump, where he was pulled at 77 pitches when he was cruising in that inning against the Pirates, which kickstarted Eric Orsi having his debut and being lit up, and just a shit show of an inning, the Mets losing that game when they should not have, at least in that moment, that tied 2-2 ball game. That was a situation where I certainly was against Carlos Mendoza's decision making to pull Christian Scott, who looked sharp and looked healthy there. Not the case today for Christian Scott, who was clearly gassed and clearly was going to continue to get barreled hard, if not give up another bomb, which he gave up 2 home runs today, as is not something that you ideally want to see there in the case of Scott. So for Christian to be pulled in this situation, still in the 80-plus pitch range, I thought that was a brilliant move by Carlos Mendoza today, and an even better move to have Jose Butto be the guy to come in and eat 2.2 innings, and then also have Danilo Nunez do what he did. And to speak on the bullpen a little bit further, let's reel back into Jose Butto, because this is what my man Isaac Roffman has to say about him. It is great to see Butto use his changeup as a legit putout pitch. He got an incredible 7 whiffs on today and had himself a 100% whiff rate. Yes, everyone that swung on that changeup simply didn't hit it today, and that's huge for Jose Butto, who did not walk any batters today either, for a guy who's fluctuated quite a bit with his walk rate thus far this season. The slider also looked good. Those are 2 legit put-away pitches for him that we are now seeing as a multi-inning reliever. And Danilo Nunez, the slider, the fastball, the 1-2 punch, just like Edwin Diaz, not as electric, but also not terribly far off with how good Nunez has been this year. Great stuff to see from this Mets bullpen as a whole. And look, Prince in the chat says, look, it can't possibly get any worse than Tyler Naquin, Darren Ruff, and Daniel Vogelbach for the deadline. It really can't. Literally, if the Mets did nothing at the deadline, they would still be better positioned than what they would have been back in 2022, because that's how much the DH was a glaring hole. Whereas I actually still have a level of faith in them getting the best out of some of their bullpen options internally still, versus seeking just externally. So that's what I have to say on that front, everybody. Let me know your key takeaways on the pitching end for sure in the chat, as we always do, everybody. But now let's pivot briefly into the offensive end. But before we do, let's take a quick word to talk about our amazing sponsor, as we have an awesome slate of not only games, but even some great things on the MMA front happening today in UFC land. And that all has to do with getting involved with our amazing sponsor and the best, the #1 American sportsbook out there, our great friends at BetUS. Let's hear about them.
BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
As always, everybody, shout out to our great friends at BetUS. And you know what? I'm going to throw at you some things. Okay, they're not going to give me any lines for tonight, it appears, because they're only going to show UFC 304. They're not going to show a card that isn't pay-per-view, so I will not be talking about UFC picks at the moment. However, I am going to talk about some daily MLB picks, as we always do here on the channel. And this week, we went right around 500 on our picks for our daily parlays. So again, to everyone that tailed, congratulations. My apologies if I lost you some money. I'm no betting expert. I just love to bet with my great friends at BetUS that we do here all the time. Seattle Mariners, LA Angels, that's a big matchup. And when I say big, I mean in the case of wanting to favor the Mariners there as a money line favorite. Toronto Blue Jays and D-backs. Yeah, that's a D-backs game for sure. Cubs, Cardinals not touching the doubleheader whatsoever. Okay, so we got the Mariners and we got the Angels. So we're going to go M's here. We're doubling up on them, liking my M's and like my D-backs. That is going to be our two-pick parlay tonight. We're going with the favorites on the money line, but for obvious reasons, that is $10 to win 20. So if you guys want to throw a parlay, say $20, that's going to win you double. Same applies. If you go 100, you're going to win 200 should both those games turn out. Not telling you guys to throw out that much money on a parlay, no less, but if you are, make sure you do it with our great friends by clicking the link in the description today. That way you too get a 125% bonus. Not your first, not your second, but your first 3 deposits, all with our great friends at BetUS. Check them out today. And again, thank you all so much in advance for doing so, everybody. But now let's hop back into this and let's talk on the offensive end, because 7 runs today is certainly nothing to scoff at whatsoever. And I will gladly take that. This Mets offense has been so consistent that I already feel spoiled a little bit as a fan. I can't be frank. I can't lie there, rather. And Steve, thank you so much for the update. I appreciate that, because we will wrap up the show by doing a quick prospect update for each and every one of you. And give me 1 second, everybody. Apologies, folks. A message needed to be answered there. It was very urgent. Let's see. Miguel, yes, we touched on that situation in the beginning of the show. Yes. Mr. Delightful, D-Mac, Rebecca, Daniel Caps, Steven, all you great members, thank you all so much for being here as we're breaking down the latest in Mets land as they go on to win this one in victorious fashion by a final score of 7-3. And on the offensive end, the heroics continue from Francisco Lindor. When we all saw that dead center bomb, I was at the edge of my seat. My girlfriend was right to my right, sitting at my desk right now. She's on my bed and we're looking at the TV together. Soon as that baseball was hit, I just jumped right out of my chair and I was like, let's effing go. Dead center bomb. She was like, what was that at? What happened? I'm like, it hit the black. That means it's a home run. She's like, oh, yay, let's go. So we were absolutely pumped up. You love to see it. Lindor with the 3-run home run today. Now with a 250 average and a 775 OPS this season. Brandon Nimmo 1 for 4 with a 251 average and an 823 OPS. A rare 3-strikeout game for Brandon. JD Martinez continues to find himself in a slump as he's 0 for 5 today with a pair of strikeouts, a 264 average and an 809 OPS. Yes, he has dropped almost 100 points in the OPS over the past couple weeks because of how much he's fluctuated with his offensive contribution there. Pete Alonso, 1 for 4. And I will say this, I know this doesn't hold true for all season long because JDM was rolling for a good stretch in the 3-hole. However, that 3-hole has been where a lot of Mets batters have just went to die in stretches this year. Brandon Nimmo had no clue how to hit in the 3-hole this year, and now we see JD Martinez having his fair share of struggles there. Alonso, however, 1 for 4 with a run scored, 241 average, 769 OPS. Alonso had a leadoff hit today for the Mets, at least so I believe the second inning, but that's all she wrote there. He kick-started that 4-run inning for the Metsies in the second. DJ Stewart 1 for 2 with a run scored, a walk and a strikeout, 173 average, 635 OPS. I love Teddy Bear, but not a guy that I want to see batting 5th like ever in this lineup, no matter what the pitching matchup is. Harrison Bader, who came in later in the ball game there for defense and some offense, 0 for 1, 277 average, 744 OPS for the man who hit 2 home runs yesterday. We love you, Harrison. Extend Bader, baby. Let's get those talks going. Marky V was Mr. 0 for 4 today, surprisingly, with a 292 average and a 901 OPS on the year. Jose Iglesias did not get an at-bat, but did come in to play the hot corner to end the ball game. Ben Gamel was 0 for 2, but with 2 runs scored thanks to a pair of walks. Gamel with a 111 average and a 555 OPS. Luis Torrens, 1 for 3 with 2 runs scored, the double and an RBI, even though he drove in 2. The one came in via an error, however. 283 average and an 880 OPS on the season for our backup catcher. You know, no slight to Tomas Nido whatsoever, but when I tell you that Luis Torrens is quite literally the best backup of the game today, it is quite literally the truth. And I had someone comment on my Twitter earlier saying, Wardy, you know, are you high? What about Travis d'Arnaud? I'm obviously not being too literal here, but based on the small sample size, it is true. Since Luis Torrens has become a Metropolitan catcher, no backup catcher in Major League Baseball has had better numbers than him throughout that span. That's a fact. Same way Francisco Alvarez has been a top 5 catcher in Major League Baseball and will be top 3, if not top 1, by the end of the season with the way he's been playing. What has impressed me most about Francisco Alvarez, especially something that doesn't get talked about nearly enough, in my opinion, is Alvarez's ability to spray the baseball this year, reel back a little bit on the home run hacks in order to showcase more of a truly balanced approach as a hitter. Alvarez already has the same amount of doubles this season that he did all of last year, right? And that's a ridiculously small sample size. One is 40 plus games, the other's 120 plus games. Alvarez is doing amazing things this season, and he didn't even play today, yet we have to shed some light on him because he's easily one of the best, most exciting catchers in the game right now. But what he's doing is franchise altering between the offense and this pitching staff. There's no denying that without Francisco Alvarez, this Mets team would not be nearly where they would want to be. That's why I told each and every one of you, when Alvarez first went down with that thumb injury in LA against the Dodgers, I knew that was a recipe for disaster for this Mets team because he impacts the Mets so much more beyond just what you see with the eye test and what you see with that big bat that can rip those home runs. Only 4 bombs on the year. More will come naturally. But in the meantime, everything that he has done from a balanced hitter approach has made him and Vientos one of the best young 1-2 punches of a tandem in all the National League. And that really does go in hand with the exciting young tandems, maybe on the pitching end of a Paul Skeens and a Jared Jones that my friend Isaac Roppin highlighted in yesterday's postgame show. Just great to see, and it's honestly, I can't say how privileged I am to see that man on the wall behind me now, right around the same age as me, and Mr. Francisco Eltro Alvarez continue to be one of the best and most young, exciting, dominant backstops at the position. And then you throw in what Luis Torrens is doing in a 100K sample size. Holy shit, James McCann and Omar Narvaez continue to send those schmucks to the sun because they prove just how much you can quite literally get away with highway robbery at the MLB level. And I know other players and the Chris Bryants and the Anthony Rendones and the Andrew Benintendi certainly have something to say about that as well. It doesn't change the fact that it's still ridiculous when it happens, especially in the case of it happening to us Mets, unfortunately. Let's see what we got here in the chat, though, everybody. We are going to wrap up the show here soon, but before I do, we will get into that pitching prospect report as we always do on the front. But on the offensive end, again, the Mets offense has just been absolutely rolling. And let's take a quick look here on the offensive numbers, folks. We're going to pan to Fangraphs. These numbers will probably not be relevant to today's games yet. However, they are relevant to just in general leading into today's game. So taking a look at overall offensive numbers that we see in Major League Baseball. The New York Metropolitans currently rank 7th in all baseball in team WAR at 16.5. In team WRC Plus, they currently rank 4th in baseball, just one behind the New York Yankees. Crazy enough, 114, Yanks at 115. It's insane, the similarities between the two there, actually. And defensively, that's where the Mets have had their biggest gripes, which is why they are not overall where they necessarily want to be yet this year outside the pitching end. Defense is still something that they need to work on quite a bit, especially in the case of the infield defense. It's been looking sharp lately, but we all remember when the Mets just didn't know what to do for like a week or two straight and had the yips, right? Where I think it's time to pull out the denim jacket for the Bauer era. If you know, you know. Well, thankfully, that era is never going to happen again. It's never going to happen in a Metropolitan uniform. As much as I love the denim jacket, I don't rep it much because that puppy's getting a little tight. I've had that denim jacket since I was like 16, 17 years old. I'm 24 this summer, okay? So just for some context for you all, I've had it for a while. I don't think we're going to be able to rock the denim jacket much this year, but shed a couple pounds, shed a little bit of the new dad bod weight that has kicked in the past couple weeks, and, you know, we'll rock it maybe a couple times this year. We'll see what happens. Last time I put that puppy on, I was like, I don't need to rush to wear this again. That was the first thing I told myself. But on the offensive end for the Metsies, something that I definitely did want to make a note of was on the home run end, these guys have been balling out, right? Entering today's game, the Mets had 119 home runs, which was ranked 4th in all Major League Baseball this season. On the RBI front, the Mets currently ranked 8th entering today's game. Stolen base front, let's see where they are on the stolen bags. 12th, actually not terrible. They're above average, so I will take that. Runs scored, the Metsies are all the way at 8th, so they have struggled to get on base, not as much as they would have liked in hand with the RBIs are, but that too will change. And let's get into team average. Entering today's game, the Mets are 10th with team average. On OBP, the Mets are ranked 10th as well, actually. Slugging, they are ranked 8th. And WOBA, they are ranked 7th. Okay, so WAR and WRC Plus has them as between a top 5 and top 10 offense. And since, again, May 31st, the Mets have been rolling on the offensive end. Actually, I'm going to put that date in real quick because I want to relay that here because I have been blown away by this. I have never seen a Mets offense this consistent be this good, right? I haven't. Have you? Have you? Seriously. Over the past decade, have we seen a Mets offense be as good as the one that we are currently seeing right now? Miss me with the 2022 bullshit, okay? That was only fun because the Mets had everything clicking at once. They actually had starting pitching to back. They had solid bullpen help, obviously. You had an electric, ultimately a $100 million contract year that we saw from Edwin Diaz. You had things working in their favor. And on the offensive end was slap hitting, and you missed the lawn ball. The Mets aren't missing the lawn ball this year. They are now 13-12 in their past 15 games as well at Citi Field. That cannot be understated for a Mets team that I've heavily criticized has not known how to play at all at Citi Field, especially earlier in the year when the weather isn't in their favor. It's been a problem. But when the summer is now turned around, this Mets team has blossomed at home, and I cannot wait to hit the ballpark again sooner rather than later. And I know that today's game, my man Steve, I do believe, was at the game. Steve, I hope you had a fantastic time, my friend. I apologize I was not able to be there. Have some other things, have birthdays I'm attending to this weekend on my own front. So again, wishing you the absolute best if you were at the game today. Steve, great member. Keto, great member. Happy to have you in here. Kish, great member. How are you guys doing? But if we take a look at the Metsies here, let's just go all the way back to since June 1st. Let's go all the way since June 1st to now. Where do they rank among all teams in Major League Baseball in offense? They rank right now in WRC Plus, they are first. In WAR, they are second, only trailing the Minnesota Twins. In RBIs, they are first. In runs scored, they are first. In home runs, they are second, only trailing the Baltimore Orioles, and which my O's, I'd like you guys to step up and not get absolutely bitch slapped by the Yanks this weekend, but unfortunately, that's what's been happening. On the stolen base front, the Metsies are well below. They're 16th. Okay, let's look at batting average throughout the stretch. Mets are third. OBP, Mets are second. Slugging, Mets are first at 489. WOBA, Mets are second at 357. And again, on WAR, if I didn't mention that already, Mets are second at 10.3, only trailing there, that being the Twins at 11. AZ, thank you so much for the donation. AZ says, I'm sold. Extend Bader right now. Yeah, Bader's going to be a really fun guy for the Mets to consider bringing back on this offseason. He's going to be looking for a good payday, but if he wants to stay with the vibes and the Mets like what they have here in their configuration, want to build off this heading into 2024, even if Bader is an expendable option for them by the deadline, I say you at minimum consider it for sure. We did see that big brawl last night too. Yep, that's what happens when you throw heat right to Heston Kjerstad's head, and now he's out, unfortunately, concussion protocol, which I will say 0-2 count, end of the game. I don't think it was purposeful by the Yanks. It was raining, I'm pretty sure, too. However, the drama that ensued afterwards was as expected between those two teams when the Orioles have taken care of, their child, that being the Yanks, throughout the first couple series this year. However, the Yankees have dethroned the Orioles as the daddy between the two in this weekend's matchup. Yankees balling out big time right now, and the O's just don't have a recipe for the Yanks' success. But now to get back into this one now, folks, before we wrap it up, let's get into the prospect report. Anything happening on the prospect end outside of Brandon Sproat before we wrap up the show? Let's talk about it. Do I think Beatty is gone at the deadline? I don't think he's a lock to be gone at all, no. Do I think the Mets will consider trading him, however? Yes, for sure. Well, Joshua Perez, thank you so much for the $2 haul, Josh. Thank you so much, my man. Happy to have you in here. Hope all's well. We're just about at 100 likes here in the live show. Thank you all so much for that, everybody. You guys are all the absolute best. Before we wrap this up now, let's do a quick pivot here to the Syracuse Mets. Let's see what's happening. If there are any games actively going on, I will tell you Drew Gilbert, the Mets top outfield prospect who made his rehab return that we saw a couple days ago going over 2 with a walk, he is back for we see in Port St. Lucie today. He will be batting second in that game as he continues his rehab assignment. Right now, the Syracuse Mets are currently losing 3-0 to, who are they losing here to? To Scranton. They're losing to Scranton Wilkes-Barre 3-0. Its base is loaded with at least 1 out here. Let's see if there's anything at least that stood out on the offensive end or no. And so far, no. Nothing has stood out there. Blade Tidwell has given up 3 over 3 and has walked 3, so Tidwell is having, unfortunately, another rough AAA outing where he is struggling big time with his command. So now let's pivot to the Rebel Ponies and see what's going on in their game, if anything, everybody. Again, I don't know when these games started for each of them in the minor leagues today. Some have, they all have started at the same time. Some are just have started because they had a 7 o'clock game. It varies, and that seems to be, most of these are kind of almost halfway through. Rebel Ponies are currently up 2-0 in their game against New Hampshire. And let's see on the Rebel Pony front, especially guys like Ryan Clifford, etc., who's standing out today and why. And who has stood out so far today has been Kevin Parada, 1 for 2 with a run scored. Parada, who's hit home runs in back-to-back games entering today's matchup. Love that from Parada, as he's been struggling for sure, but picking himself up over the past month that we have seen at least. We saw Jeremiah Jackson rip his 12th home run of the season there to give them the lead between the two, and the 2-0 lead against the Fisher Cats for the Metsies here in the Rumble Ponies. On the offensive end, nothing else is really standing out. Ryan Clifford didn't even get the start today, so he's coming off the bench. Rare off day there for Clifford, and that's about that. On the pitching end, nothing to make note of. Moreno's through 3 shutties so far, allowed a hit and a walk, a sub-4 ERA on the season. Let's check the Cyclones now, and then we'll wrap things up with the Port St. Lucie Mets. Joshua Perez with the $5 haul. Thank you so much for that, Joshua. Josh says the player the Mets need is Tanner Scott. Just sucks he's in the same division. I hope the Marlins don't mind trading him to us. Let's go, Mets. Yep, I would love Tanner Scott. I do intend on discussing him yet again in the coming days on the channel. And yes, he's a guy that I do think will be easier said than done to land because he's in the division. Now, I can't speak on Peter Bendick's behalf, the new GM and Pobo there for the Marlins, but I can say that Bendix is very much an analytics savvy type of mindset that the Mets actually interviewed a couple years ago for a front office position. Bendix did not happen. Went from the Rays to the Marlins to take over for Kim as their new GM and the man at the helm there. And one thing that we notice with Bendix is he just cares most about the future of the organization, the return. The Mets provide a solid return they will consider, but if you're David Stearns, you probably don't want to part ways with much prospect capital, if at all, for a Tanner Scott who's been having a great year, which means he may come at a premium for a reliever. And that is something that the Mets will certainly consider as they evaluate who to go after this year. But on the case of the Brooklyn Cyclones, they're about to lose their game 3-2 in the top of the 9th. Nothing from Nick Morabito, who's been having a great season for them, high contact hitter, and that's really it there. Nothing else stands out for the most part. So now let's finish this off by getting to the St. Lucie Mets. And if this game has started, I will have an update for you all on Drew Gilbert to see if he has done anything on that front yet or not. So we'll see there. Who pitches for the Chicago White Sox? Plenty that the Mets would like. Garrett Crochet, Michael Kopech, Eric Fetty, just to name a few. We would gladly take all those arms for sure. Kopech has fluctuated with his production this year. He's had a couple bad outings, which have inflated his ERA, but he's a guy that could be useful for the Mets out of the bullpen, multi-inning guy. Garrett Crochet is a guy you give up an arm and a leg for, but for good reason, because he's one of the most dominant southpaws in Major League Baseball now. And Eric Fetty is a guy who I just feel has Mets written all over him for a David Stearns that tried his best to land him this past offseason, coming back from the KBO as he was initially in the MLB a couple years ago, serving on batting practice for the Washington Nationals. What we see here in this rehab assignment, on the front of Mr. Drew Gilbert. Drew Gilbert is 0 for 2 so far today. No walks, no hits, nothing like that. That's all she wrote. And it's 0-0 in the top of the 4th in that matchup. Cameron Kier, thank you so much for the $5 donation. Cameron says, need to invest in this team at the deadline. Arizona proved that all you have to do is get in. And I told you guys heading into this season, Arizona was 84 wins last year, right? The Phillies 2 years ago just snuck in, right? When that was the same year they fired their former manager, what's his face? Why am I blanking so hard right now? Joe Girardi, because the Mets beat up on the Phillies so bad in the first half of the 2022 season. They needed a whole overhaul, a whole change on the coaching front, and it worked for them. And for the Mets here, again, you just got to be a couple games above 500. You got to be in that realm, and I do think they will absolutely find themselves in a good position for hopefully, at minimum, a playoff berth this year, and us have something to be excited about come October. Thank you again for that donation, Cameron. I really do appreciate that, and I find myself agreeing with you. Love to have Crochet and see the Mets use him as their ace in the playoffs, as would I, but it's going to cost too much probably for the Mets to actually realistically happen. Do I want it to happen? Yes. Do I expect it to happen? No. I think those differences are very important to evaluate, and it's something that I will reiterate when I get into talking about trade targets for the Mets in this upcoming week. But everybody, that is going to do it for the live show. I want to again thank you all so much, everybody that watched live and a replay. The Mets win an awesome one by a final score of 7-3, and they look to continue their winning ways and secure a 6th straight victory tomorrow. This time being against the Colorado Rockies. But before I let you all out of here, I will share this final update, and that is the sweetness, which is the wild card standings at the moment. The St. Louis Cardinals sadly did win today. So did the Mets, however. Now the Mets and the Cardinals are tied at 49 and 45 apiece that we see there for second place. 3.5 games trailing the Atlanta Braves. What does this mean? When the Mets and the Braves match up 2 weeks from now, towards the end of the month, we will have, for the first time this year, a heated rivalry matchup between the two teams where these games absolutely matter and matter more than they ever had since going back to the final series between the two and the 2022 season. Those rivalries between the Braves and the Phillies are sparking up yet again, and I cannot wait to see those matchups take place. Until then, everybody, have a fantastic night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this, and this is your boy Wardy signing out. Let's go, Matt.